Good guy, that Mike Garafolo.
He's aging like a fine wine. He's Mike Garafolo, our NFL Network buddy. And Mike, the NFL injury bug caught up to a couple of more quarterbacks after week number 3. Justin Herbert of the Chargers dealing with an ankle injury that he suffered, and that week 3 loss to Pittsburgh. And then Brock Purdy banged up his back in that loss to the Rams. Back soreness. What are the likelihood that we're going to see one or both of these quarterbacks in week 4, Mike?
You know, I think the Chargers are going to proceed this week. Remember, he didn't practice the first day of the week last week and still played. So they're going to proceed kind of like they did last week and hope that he comes along and is able to play against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, they went into that game, the Chargers did, with 3 quarterbacks active. They could have had the third quarterback as an emergency quarterback, but they were all active. So they knew going into that game that potentially something could happen the way that it did, and he could leave, and they'd need the maximum flexibility at the quarterback spot, because if you had the emergency quarterback, he can only play if the other 2 are hurt, and then the other 2 can't come back in. So I'm a little skeptical that he's going to be out there this week, but I know Justin Herbert has played through a bunch of stuff in his career. I know he wants to play badly against the Chiefs, so we'll see if he can get himself ready to go. Again, if he's not practicing on Wednesday, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not in line to start. Meanwhile, Purdy, you talked about him. I reached out to someone in San Francisco and said, is Purdy going to be all right this week? And they said, he better be. And the point being, they've got so many injuries across their roster now. It's like, on top of this, we've got our quarterback dealing with some back soreness. But the hope is that he should be just fine and able to play this week and manage that soreness there. And hopefully it doesn't become anything worse if you're the San Francisco 49ers. Because, again, I talked about all those injuries, including Christian McCaffrey, who went to Germany to see a specialist. And when you go see a specialist in Germany and you go that far, that person better be special. And by the way, Jay, I looked up how to pronounce specialist in German. Spezialist is what I was told. So, yeah, pretty much the same word, just you say it differently. But McCaffrey looking for any solution possible to put this Achilles tendonitis that was supposed to be behind him months ago, to find a way to put it behind him. We'll see if there's any progress off of this trip.
I got to say, I like the idea of turning this whole segment into a Mike Garafolo German lesson, but we've got to move on. We've got to talk. We've got to stick with quarterbacks here, Mike, because we got to talk about Antonio Pierce now sticking with Gardner Minshew as his quarterback, despite that loss to Carolina this past weekend. Any other teams contemplating a change under center, Mike?
Yeah, now my understanding is that never really was a strong consideration. I mean, Pierce sort of mentioned it, and the media ran with it. He said, no, he was trying to tell them that they needed to watch the film together and talk and kind of go from there. He didn't want to commit to anything. But, yeah, Gardner Minshew going to continue with the Raiders here, hoping he can bounce back after that performance. To me, it's the Dolphins and Skylar Thompson, who's day-to-day with a rib injury, which sometimes can give you that kind of cover to make the switch to, in this case, it would be Tyler Huntley. And I know folks have talked about what options are there outside the building. It's a tough thing to do with a quarterback. I mean, we've seen it done. Baker Mayfield's done it in recent memory. Joe Flacco on relatively short notice with the Browns last year. But you don't want to have to resort to that at this point, especially when you hope that Tua Tagovailoa is going to come back, and that is the hope moving forward. But I just got a sneaking suspicion that we could, even if it's both quarterbacks, we could see Tyler Huntley as the Dolphins look for a spark here to try to keep this season alive while they wait for Tagovailoa's return.
I know you've always been intrigued with Tyler Huntley's talent. I think a lot of us have, right? Like, this is kind of, I mean, like you said, nobody wants to see Tua get hurt, Mike, but I'm kind of intrigued to see what Tyler can do here.
At this point, having seen what we saw from Skylar Thompson, I don't think it can get much worse than that. And yeah, you can get a spark, and a guy that can do some stuff with his legs like he did from time to time when he was the quarterback of the Ravens.
Yeah, 100%. Two of the more disappointing teams this season. It's no secret, Mike. It's the Dallas Cowboys, and it's especially the 0-3 Cincinnati Bengals. Who of those two teams do you see more likely to turn their season around?
You know, I kind of like both, to be honest with you, but I feel like the Bengals are on the verge of something and can find a way to turn this angst into something positive. They were really hurting on the defensive side of the ball the other night, missing a couple of their defensive tackles, including Sheldon Rankins. They're still moving the ball off. Like, you could see offensively, they're doing what they need to do. They ran the ball well. Joe Burrow, I thought, looked sharp. He found Jamar Chase down the field. T. Higgins in his first game working his way back. So I still see the makings of a really good football team here. And maybe it's that team that just puts the wins together, gets in as one of the final wild card spots, and it's just not that team you want to see in the playoffs, because we've seen their ability to go on the road, even to Kansas City recently in the postseason, and be able to win games. So I still look at that Bengals team, and of the two that you mentioned, that to me is the more dangerous team. I think the Cowboys can get right again, but if you had me pick between the two, I'm still going Cincinnati as a dangerous, well-coached, talented team.
And just a heck of a job by Joe Burrow with those frosted tips. They will become trendy again. Mark my words, Mike Garafolo. In the words of the great German poet Heidi Klum, Auf Wiedersehen, Mike Garafolo. You're the best.
So long, farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Good night, Jay.